Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name's Aiden, and today we're going to be building a planter box. So before we get started, we're going to go over the materials that we're going to be using for this project. What we're going to need is some sandpaper, a bottle of glue, a little tray for all of our hardware, a damp rag, and of course, our safety glasses. Now that we've gone over the materials, let's go ahead and talk about the tools that we're going to need for this project. So we're going to go ahead and open up our toolkit. And all that we're going to be taking out today is just our hammer. So go ahead and put the hammer on your desk, close up the toolkit, and we're going to get it out of our way. Now that we've got all our materials and tools ready, we can go ahead and open up our box. I'm going to use the back of my hammer and just slide it right along the tape at the top so I can easily open up the box. Now let's go over all of the materials that we're going to find inside our box. The first thing that you'll see is this large bag of dirt. We're going to hold this off to the side for later. Next, you're going to find a small bag with our hardware and seeds. We'll go over each of those in just a moment. Now we get to our wood pieces. First thing we're going to take out is the base of our planter box. You can tell it's the base because it's going to have the logo here on the bottom and these two drainage holes as well. So we'll put that off to the side. Next, we're going to take out our two large rectangular pieces. These are going to be our long sides for our box. You'll notice that these pieces have pre-drilled holes on either side, and there should be 4 holes total. The next thing we're taking out are going to be the small sides of our box. There are no pre-drilled holes on these ones, and they're the same, so it doesn't matter which one you choose for which side. The final wood pieces you'll find in your box are going to be the 2 little feet for your planter box. Now that we've talked about all of our wood pieces, let's go ahead and discuss the hardware that we're going to use for this project. Inside our plastic bag, you'll find a smaller bag with 3 3/4 inch finish nails. These are going to have a yellow dot on them. And then you'll find a slightly larger bag with a green dot, and these are going to be our 1-inch finish nails. The final thing you'll find inside this bag is a little tiny bag of seeds. We're going to go ahead and put this with our soil, because that's going to be our last step. Once you've emptied the bag, go ahead and get it out of your way, put it inside your box, wherever it is that it's going to give you enough space to work. All right, so now we've introduced all of our materials. First thing I'm going to go ahead and do is open up my hardware bag and dump my nails into my tray so that I don't lose anything. Again, once the bags are empty, go ahead and get them out of your way. All right, now we can start building. So what we're going to need to start is 1 long side piece and 1 short side piece. You're going to want to place the short side piece onto your table with the longer side facing up. Next, we're going to take some glue and we're going to evenly spread a bead of glue across the top. Make sure you don't lose your red cap. Go ahead and spread that glue out evenly with your finger. It's okay if you make a little bit of a mess, that's what the rag is for. And I'm just going to go ahead and wipe my finger off on my damp rag. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab 2 of our 1-inch finish nails and we're going to place 1 nail into the pre-drilled holes on one side of our long piece. You don't have to push them in all the way, just enough that they're not going to fall out. It's going to make it easier to nail later. So now that we have our pieces prepped, I'm going to go ahead and lay this pre-nailed edge of our long side piece over the top of the glued edge of my short side piece. I'm going to use the other short side piece to stabilize it so I can make sure it's all set and flush. So what I want to do is line these pieces up perfectly so that there's no gap between them. You can see I'm getting a little bit of glue spilling out. That's okay. Just go ahead and wipe it on your damp rag. No big deal. And it's really important that you get these 2 pieces flush on the front and on the 2 corners at the front and the back. So take your time with this step. The more flush it is, the better it's going to look at the end. Once you're happy with where your pieces are at, you can clean off your fingers, and we're going to get set to hammer in our first nail. You always want to start with just one nail, so I'm going to start with this one farthest from me. I'm going to pick up my hammer. Notice how I'm holding my hammer from the center of the handle. You don't want to hold it way up here because that's going to really reduce your leverage and ability to swing with power. And holding it way down here is going to make it really hard to aim your hammer. So let's keep our hand right in the sweet spot, right there in the middle. We've already got our corners flushed up, so we're going to go ahead and tack in our first nail. Tacking in the nail means that we're hitting it about halfway in, just to hold our two wood pieces together. Once it's all tacked in, we're going to make a final check to make sure it's flush, and then we'll hammer the nail off. We're going to run our finger over that to make sure our nail is flush. That means that you don't feel the nail sticking out at all. This feels pretty good, so I'm going to move on to my next nail. Before I do that, I want to make sure that my pieces didn't shift while I was hammering in the first nail. So I'm going to make any adjustments that I need to. And then I'm going to go ahead and hammer in that second nail. One important thing that I didn't mention, while you're hammering with your dominant hand, you're going to use your offhand to hold your pieces steady so they don't move while you're hammering. Let's go ahead and knock that nail in. Again, double checking to make sure my nails are flush, they're not sticking out. I'm going to examine my piece, looks really good. So let's just go ahead and wipe up any excess glue that may have spilled out, and we can attach our second side. So just like we did before, we're going to set up our small side piece just like this, and we're going to apply a bead of glue right along the top. Once you've got that on there, go ahead and spread it out with your finger just like we did before. And again, go ahead and wipe off that finger, make sure you're all clean, moving on to the next step. Again, just like we did before, we're going to grab 2 more of our inch-long finish nails and place 1 nail into the pre-drilled holes on our long side piece. And then we're going to go ahead and line those nails up with our glued edge on the short side piece. Take your time with this step, make sure that everything's flush. It's not a race. You really want this to get as close to perfect as you can get it. So I'm going to run my finger there, that feels flush there. A little adjustment here. And like I said, take your time, make sure your wood pieces are in the right spot, they're flush on all your corners. Go ahead and hold it together with your offhand, pick up your hammer, and tack in that first nail. I've tacked it in, so let's double check that we're flush on all sides, and I can go ahead and finish that nail off. Nail's flush, so I'm going to once again make sure that my edges haven't moved and hammer in that final nail. Awesome, it's looking really good. So we've got our 2 short sides attached to our long side piece. What we're going to do next is go ahead and flip this over so that the open sides of the short sides are facing up towards the ceiling. This time we're going to apply glue to both short side pieces. So let's go ahead and do that now. Just like we did before, we're going to evenly spread that glue with your finger. There you go. Make sure you get glue all over that surface of the short side edge. We want a really nice connection between our pieces. Now we're going to go ahead and grab our second long side piece, and we're going to put one 1-inch finish nail into each of the pre-drilled holes on the long side piece. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you're using your inch-long nails for this step. Those are going to be the larger nails that you have in your hardware tray. So now that we've got our nails set into the holes, we're going to go ahead and place that pre-nailed edge over the glued edges of our short side pieces. Now you'll notice when you put this on, it's not going to be flush on either side. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on one side, we're going to flush that up, hammer off our nails, and then we'll focus on the next side. So I'm going to start on my left side here, and I'm going to begin by lining these pieces up so that they're nice and flush. Again, I'm not worried about this other side, I'm just focusing on my left side first. So I'm going to move that over a little bit. We're checking on all sides. We want to be flush on our corners. And that looks pretty good right there. So just like we've done before, go ahead and clean off our fingers. I'm going to spin this around so it's towards my dominant hand. And I'm going to use my off hand to hold it in place. One last check to make sure things are flush. And I'm going to tack in my first nail. Once I've tacked in that first nail, again, I'm checking to make sure I'm still flush, nothing's moved, and I'm going to finish that nail off. All right, that's nice and flush. One last check to make sure my edges are flush, and I will hammer in my second nail. Awesome. This side's looking good, so let's do the next one. I'm going to go ahead and spin that around. Now this side's naturally going to want to pull inward, so we might need to use a little bit of force to line it up and hold it in place while we're hammering. We're going to be fighting against physics here a little bit, but once you have it in place, you're going to want to press down with your off hand to make sure that those pieces aren't going to move. Once you've got it to a place that looks good, you're flush on all sides, go ahead and tack in that first nail. One last check to make sure we're flush, and we're going to finish it off. Now at this point, with 3 nails already in there, there's not a whole lot you're going to be able to do to move your pieces, but let's just do a last check to make sure we're all flush, and we'll finish off the nail. Remember to always check your nails, make sure they're flush, they're not sticking up at all, and look at that, we've got the frame for our box. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to wipe up any excess glue that may have come out during that last step. You're going to want to make sure to check the inside corners here, because sometimes the glue can get stuck in there. So be really careful to check anywhere that glue might have spilled out, because we want to make sure that our box is nice and clean. All right, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we have the frame of our box finished. The next step is going to be to attach the bottom. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be our bottom piece. You're going to want to check for the side that has the logo on it with the 2 drainage holes next to it. And you're also going to want to check for your pre-drilled nail holes, and there should be 4 of those around the corners. So before I can place this on, I'm going to want to go ahead and apply glue around this edge. So let's do that now. Make sure your glue is nice and even as you're spreading it out. All right, beautiful. Now let's go ahead and spread that with our finger. Make sure we're covering all of the wood with glue. If you're noticing any spots that aren't covered in glue, go ahead and put a little bit more glue on there. All right, that's looking pretty good. Go ahead and wipe off my finger. And now I'm going to place my bottom piece over that glued edge and start to line it up so that it's flush on all sides. Once I've got it in a place that looks pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and place my nails. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So before we hammer off our nails, we want to make sure that our sides are flush. I'm going to go ahead and start with this left corner that's closest to me, and I'm going to make sure that corner is perfectly flush. Now, depending on how flush your whole box is, adjusting this corner might throw off the other corners. So I'm just going around checking each one, making sure that my bottom is in a place where it's going to be as close to flush as possible on all sides. That's a pretty good place for it, so I'm going to go ahead and hammer in my first nail. As always, I'm going to spin this around so the nail is close to my dominant hand, hold it in place with my off hand, and let's go ahead and hammer it off. Beautiful. Double check to make sure your nail is flush. If not, give it a couple more taps. All right, that's looking really good. So now again, like we've done before, we're going to just make sure that our bottom didn't get knocked out of place while we were hammering. Double check that you're flush, and we're going to come across to the opposite corner diagonal from the first nail, and we're going to hammer that nail in to square off the bottom of our box. All right, double check your flush. Looks really good. Now that we've got these two nails in, the bottom's not going anywhere. So we don't really need to worry about flushing it up. We're just going to go ahead and finish off the rest of our nails. All right, double check that all your nails are flush, your corners are flush, and then we'll go ahead, use your damp rag, and wipe up any excess glue that might have spilled out. Just like we did before, we want to flip it over and check the inside. Make sure that all the excess glue is getting wiped up on the rag and it's not going to end up inside our planter box. Take your time with this. It can be a little bit difficult to get into those corners, but just work the rag around there. Try to get all the glue out. All right, that looks really good. So the last step in building our box is going to be to attach our feet. So as you can probably guess, the feet are going to go on the bottom of our box. So let's go ahead and flip that over like I just did. And we're going to get an idea of where we're going to be placing our feet. One thing that can kind of give you a reference for where to place them is where the nails are in the bottom of your box. So I'm actually going to go ahead and line my feet up so that they're covering those nails. If you want yours a little bit closer to the edge, that's fine. You just want to make sure you're not covering the drainage holes in the bottom here. I think that's going to be a good place for them. So once you've decided where you're going to place your feet, you're going to remove them from the box. And we're going to go ahead and place some glue along this bottom edge for both of our feet. So we're going to do that now. Get a nice even bead of glue down the bottom. Spread it out with your finger. Once you've got the glue on there, you're going to place your foot over the top, glue side down, and start to line it up with the edges. You want to make sure that the edges of the feet are flush with the edges of your box. You also want to make sure that your feet are on there straight, and it's a good idea to get this done because as soon as you put this down, the glue is going to start to dry. So we've got that in a good place. Let's go ahead and place our second foot. Just like we did before, apply your glue right down the middle. Spread it out evenly with your finger. And then we're going to place it, like I said, I'm going to place it over my nails and just make sure that it's all flush on both sides. The foot is straight. That looks really good. Okay, so in your tray, you should have 4 more nails. These are going to be your 3/4 inch finish nails. So they're a little bit shorter than the nails we used before. And these we're going to use to secure the feet to the bottom of our box. So let's go ahead and place one nail into each of the pre-drilled holes on our feet. There should be 4 of them. All right, and we already took some time to make sure our feet are flush and positioned how we want them. But before we hammer that off, let's just take one last second to double check they're in a good spot. All right, so I'm going to start with this one just because it's closer to my dominant hand. I'm going to carefully place my offhand between the 2 nails to hold it, but be really careful when you're hammering this so you don't actually accidentally hit your fingers. All right, well, let's get that first nail tacked in. Double check that we're flush, still looking really good, so let's hammer it off. That nail feels flush, so let's hammer in the second one. Beautiful. Now that we've got that nailed off, we're going to go ahead and wipe up any excess glue that might have spilled out from the bottom, on the sides, anything like that. Awesome. All right, we've got one more foot, so let's go ahead and get that nailed off. Double check that we're flush. Spin it around towards my dominant hand. off hands holding it in place, tack in that first nail. One last check to make sure everything's flush. Looking really good. Go ahead and finish off your nail. That nail feels flush. The piece is still flush on the bottom. So let's finish it off and hammer in the last nail. All right, one last check to make sure our nails are flush. Last step here, wipe up any excess glue. And let's just take one last second to inspect our box. Make sure that we've wiped up any glue that might still be seeping out through the sides. Really important to check the inside of the box. That's where the glue can kind of hide from you. All right, that's looking really, really good. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna sand this down a little bit and then we're gonna paint it. So you should still have sandpaper here on your desk. What I'd like you to do is fold that sandpaper in half so that both of the rough sides are facing outward. You're gonna hold it in your hand like that and just go ahead and sand, any rough edges you see, any glue that may have dried on the outside. So take a little bit of time to go ahead and do that now. All right, we've got our box all sanded. Now the last step is just gonna be to get it painted, and then we can place our soil and plant our seeds. Awesome, we've got our box painted. So now the last step is gonna be to get our soil in there and plant our seeds. So you're gonna go ahead and actually leave the soil inside the bag for this step. That way you don't have a big cleanup later on. First thing we're gonna wanna do is flip over our soil. So we're looking at the bottom of the bag, and I'm gonna take a pencil. You can use a precision screwdriver, pencil, pen, any kind of pointy thing you have on hand. And I'm just gonna poke a few holes into the bottom of the bag. The reason for this is because when we water our plants, we want there to be enough holes in the bottom for the water to drain out so it doesn't get all pooled up inside the bag. So you'll see I've got a few holes, looks like maybe 7 or 8 holes going down the side here. And the next step is gonna be to fit the soil into the planter box. So just kind of, massage it around, make sure it fills the space up nicely. And then we're gonna go ahead and open up our bag. At this point, if you have scissors, you can cut off the top. I don't have any scissors with me here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and fold the top of the bag over the top of my box. Might need to stretch it just a little bit, and you just wanna make sure you have a good opening here at the top and enough space for your seeds. So the last thing we're gonna need is gonna be our bag of seeds right here. What we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna make a small indent, or a couple of small indents, across the top of the soil. It really doesn't have to be too deep, but just a little bit for the seeds to sit. And then we're gonna go ahead and sprinkle the seeds as evenly as we can across the top there. Try not to get them all in one spot. And if you do end up, like I just did, pouring a few too many in one spot, you can kind of spread them out with your fingers. And then anywhere you see seeds, you're gonna wanna start pressing them into the soil. Not super deep, maybe 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. If you're not sure what that is, that's gonna be about half of your fingernail's length to the full fingernail length. So you're gonna just keep going, sticking those seeds down into the soil until you don't see any more seeds sitting at the top of the planter box. Once you're done with that, you're gonna go ahead and spread out the soil nice and evenly. And voila, your planter box is complete. So now what you can do, you can take this home with you, make sure to put it in a warm, dry area where it's gonna get lots of sunlight, and you're gonna wanna water your seeds 1 to 2 times per day. The best way to water the seeds is gonna be to spray them with a spray bottle. You don't wanna pour a bunch of water in here so that it pools up. You just wanna make sure your soil is moist and the seeds have enough water for them to grow into some beautiful flowers. All right, well, that's our planter box. Thanks for stopping by to build this with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.